Good morning. We're close to being live here. Just another few moments. Just take some time to settle into your breath. The breath is what guides our attention out of the typically busy mind and into the stillness of being. Let's take a few moments. When your mind gets busy, just go back to paying attention to the sensation of the air moving in and out of your body. The slight rise and fall of the chest and belly. Relaxing of the shoulders. Easing of the muscles around your eyes, your jaw, your throat. Just become aware of the presence of your body. Just notice the density and the weight and the presence of your body. You have legs, arms, ears, toes. Just notice how when you bring your attention to the presence of your heart, of your breath, of your body, that you tend to find peace. Beautiful. Good to be here with you today. Pull up my chat window. There we go. So just let me know who's here this morning. Go ahead and chat in. Ali, good morning. All here. Yes, beautiful. Gary, yeah, right on, brother. Staying in the conversations. Deepening into the reality of your being. Discipline, right? Right? Discipline, devotion, perseverance, and a clarity. Do we want truth? Do we want to know our own grace in this waking life, in this precious human experience? Do we want to know our grace, which is our truth? Why would we not? And the ego says, oh, I'll tell you all sorts of reasons why I don't want to know that truth, because it doesn't feel safe to me, because it feels too exposed. Because we might get hurt. And from the ego perspective, it says, and I don't think I can survive that. We'll talk more about that today. Okay. And others. Oh yeah, here's John. Mark. Yeah. So, a couple of logistics and then we'll dive in. First of all, good morning from here in Bali. It's a wet, drippy morning here in Bali. It's our rainy season. We didn't have much of one last year. This year, it's a proper rainy season. So, good morning from Bali. This is my last satsang from this villa. I move in 3 days or 4 days to a new villa. So that is going to be all that moving entails. And especially here, it's a little bit more complicated than perhaps normal. So the last satsang from here. If you are joining through, if you're an Oasis member and you've joined with the link to the Riverside website, you can join in the call at any time by pressing the button that says join in the live call. But that's only if you're on the Chrome browser. And that's you've gotten those instructions about that. If you're not through the Chrome browser, you can always chat in questions and thoughts and perspectives. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can chat in any questions, comments. And for those who are not Oasis members, if you want to contribute to satsang, to what it takes to put all this together every 2 weeks, you have an opportunity if you would like, and there's a donation link in the description of this satsang. All right, so here we are. Somebody else just joined us. Oh, no, my eyes are blurry. They came and went. So, again, take a moment and bring your awareness to your breath. Notice the easeful movement of your breath. Bring your awareness to your heart. And imagine that it is your heart that is breathing. Imagine with every inhale, it's the heart that is expanding, pulling in that rich, nourishing breath. Letting the shoulders relax, letting the body relax, letting your mind relax by pointing its awareness down into the body, to the breath, to the heart. And we see the heart, we hold the heart, not as where love lives or truth lives, but as the portal, the opening, through which the vast, boundless presence of consciousness moves through, where we can feel into the deep peace of our being, beyond the personal self, beyond the mind-body self, which will end someday. We are being. And the mind clouds the knowing of that being. And when we bring our attention to the heart, it's basically directing the attention out of the typical noise and into an inherent stillness of being. Just feel that for a moment. And ask yourself, does that ever come and go? Or do we just forget about its presence and get distracted, and it feels like the peace goes because we're distracted into the, let's say, the anxiety of our own mind, and it doesn't feel like there's peace. But then the moment we drop our awareness into the heart, into the body, out of the anxiety, we find there is a stillness of peace waiting. And an analogy that you can sit with this morning is imagine the ocean. And one day the ocean is very chaotic on the surface. There's wind, white caps, and waves. And if you live up at that thin surface layer of the ocean, you're going to be struggling, trying not to drown, trying to stay afloat, exhausting yourself. But if you allow yourself to sink down underneath the waves, not as a human body because you'd drown, but your awareness to sink down out of the chaos and waves and tumult of the mind and sink down below that, what do you find? A vast, boundless ocean, the nature of which is typically peace. The chaos of the waves, the storm is only happening up there at the surface. We tend to live up in the storm, and we forget to drop down into the presence of awareness, into the presence of being. And that's what we're going to explore here today a bit more, is the difference between meeting life through the chaos and storytelling and narratives of the mind and meeting life from the presence of our stillness, from the presence of our truth, from the presence of our grace. We can either meet life from the presence of our grace, abiding that, awake to it, or we can meet life thoroughly through the wild storytelling and narrative of mind. One is a lot more stable than the other, and I think you'll probably figure out which one's which. Okay. Some of this you've heard before. Some of this we talk about it a fair amount. Why? Because it takes a while. It takes years, typically, to really sustain an awakened presence of our consciousness. There's initially, as you well know, there's a back and forth. Oh, I'm in my meditation, I'm in stillness, or I'm practiced enough, I can find it even when I'm not in meditation, and I can find some stillness and rested peace. But then something happens. Oh, what's going on? What's happening over there? What's going on? What's happening in this moment? And we get lost in the content of the experience. We get lost in the moment. And then we forget about our truth. And then later we feel the perhaps anxiety or discomfort of our egoic narrative. And we go, oh, wait, that's right. No, that's not really who I am. And we maybe go to our breath and we come back into our grace, our truth. And then we remember, and there's a back and forth and a back and a forth. But it takes time. And then typically what happens is the stages are that after a while, we talk about that grace of being, that equanimity of being, that truth we're all basically seeking, to remain present in the background of all experience. So here's all of our human experience, and the truth of our being is in the background, remaining at peace. Even if we're here feeling anxiety or chaos or confusion or sadness or grief or pain or anger, anything, while we're feeling it, there's a sense that this is happening and there's a piece separate from it holding space. But then after a while, what starts to happen is the truth of your being starts to pervade the experience. It's not a back and forth anymore. Oh, I'm in my sadness. Oh, wait, no. Oh, I'm in my grace. Oh, I'm in my anger. Oh, back in my grace, in my truth. It becomes, there's my human experience. There's an arising of whatever. There's an arising. And it's arising into the presence, the pervasive presence of grace. And I am that, having a human experience. And we can see how that truth, that grace of being is allowing. Allowing is not an activity of mind. Allowing is the very nature of our grace, of our being. And it is there allowing everything that wants to arise into it. And if part of what arises into that grace is an old wounding, programming, fear, story, disempowering narrative, it's arising into light, into grace, into love, into an embrace of allowing. And the grace of our being doesn't get lost in the story. It allows, it's there, it just allows the story and witnesses it and speaks to it and loves it and maybe inquires, what's the origin of this wounding? Where did it come from? Is there any truth to it? But it's not in a battle, it's not fighting, and it's no longer just in the background. It's actually present at all times. So and there's stages beyond that even, where this grace of our being actually becomes much more the ever-present forward self, the true self, enlightened, present, not forgetting, stable, bright. And that is present. And life just meets that. And because there's been so much healing and loving of the wounding, of the conditioning, of the programming, that it really fades. It falls apart. It's seen for what it is, and it falls apart. And all that is left is the essential truth of our being, which is all there really was in the first place, the only real thing that was in the first place. We don't want to discount our wounding and our conditioning and our programming, but let's see it for what it is. It's activity of mind, it's ancestral trauma, it's dynamics of the mind-body experience that can fade away, break down, lose their power. And then all we're left with is who we are. That's a real sweet space, if you will. It's not even a space. It's a very sweet reality. So, before we go any further, thoughts, questions, either chat or jump in to the call. It's a wild ride. It's a beautiful thing to pay attention and to meet our struggles and to meet our own mind's protestations and confusions and yeah buts and genuine feelings. And sometimes it's good to talk about, how do I meet those feelings? Or what questions, if they were answered or spoken to, what questions if they were spoken to, would help to navigate this whole different way of perceiving our lives. And if a question arises for you, then please chat it in. Just go ahead and ask. But I'll continue. So, typically, the way most humans, the way most people are living is in what we call the dream state. It is a mind-conjured image of self that we learned from mom, dad, society, early experiences, compounded, repeated types of events, things that happen in our lives that we then take in to the conditioning and let the conditioning try to figure out how we should feel and what we should make of that experience. And that's the dream state. And we call it the dream state because when we're so lost in it, we have no awareness that it's a dream. It feels so real, just like a dream. Most people do not know their own grace, their own divine nature. It feels so far away. And it's actually the closest thing you'll ever know because it's already there. It's already present. It's just veiled and masked by the noise of the narrative, the egoic story. But for most people, it feels so far away and it almost feels fantastical. And when we even speak about it in this type of language we're using here, the feeling for most people is like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not taught in my school. It's typically, I didn't learn this from my parents. It's not part of our modern culture, although it's starting to be more and more. It's certainly not being promoted by by our consumer societies. So people living in the dream state means they are living and reacting to every moment on behalf of a construct of self that has been created, layered with stories and opinions and judgments and beliefs and things they have been taught and things that their young selves deemed were true. I'm worthy, I'm unworthy, I'm not lovable, I will always have to be on guard of being hurt. All of these storylines become our sense of self. I call it the database because it's programming. It's just like a computer. You put in a bunch of crap programming and the results from everything that goes in to that programming to calculate a result, the result's always going to be wrong. The result's always going to be crap in, crap out, right? And until we come to learn the trust and abide the essential nature of our being, the only self we've got is this database, this story. And so most people, if they're doing any personal development work, they're trying desperately to clean up their story. And it can be done, but boy, it's a tough slog if you don't actually know the grace, the truth, the wholeness of your own being that's already present. Because then we're trying to replicate that peace and that love and that sense of well-being and wholeness as a concept, as an idea, as a belief. Then sometimes we get like, I've got some really good self-beliefs now. But then we're living a life of now trying to hold those together. And that's a struggle. because I've got great self-belief. Oh, but then I just had a failure in my business, or a relationship broke up, and then my belief in myself maybe is starting to crumble because the self that I'm believing in is a mental construct. It was just a really healthy one, but it's still not who you are. I hope that makes sense. You see the conundrum here. Until we know the truth of our being, we are stuck with, and all we have is trying to create a really beautiful, calm, peaceful, loving, generous, equanimous sense of self that is just new, healthier, more empowering beliefs now trying to hold together and not be disrupted. It's a mess. So we speak about this because it's so important to see the problem. How am I meeting life? I've got a dynamic in my life right now with family, and there's some really funky stuff going on, and siblings, and an aging mother with dementia, and choices and decisions. And if I didn't have a rested knowing of love, of grace, of true peace, my old story of self would be majorly triggered. I'm not being heard. I'm not being recognized. I'm being belittled. Oh gosh, I've got to win. I'm being hurt again. I mean, if I was taking in that whole situation and just giving it to a database of past experiences and stories and narratives and conclusions and opinions and judgments and beliefs, oh my God, it would be a mess. And that's what some others in my family are feeling, because they're not at all in this practice. And no judgment there, but the discerning reality is, yeah, you can just see it and feel it, and it has really nasty consequences when you see somebody responding to everything through their wounding. Because if you think of an animal, right, that's wounded, it's got a big wound. How do they respond to just about everything when they're feeling vulnerable, when they're feeling wounded, when they're feeling afraid? Man, they're going to attack everything. They're going to attack everything. They're going to fight. They're going to lash out because they feel vulnerable. They feel afraid. So most people are taking in the entire world, feeding it to their database and saying, how should I feel? How should I react? What should I think? What meaning should I give to this experience? And the database goes, ooh, this experience is very similar to experiences I've had in the past, all the way back to maybe when I was 5 years old. And it was scary, and it was hurtful, and I didn't like it. I was 5. I didn't know how to deal with any of this. And so we feed that current experience into the database. It goes back and it checks. And the 5-year-old's still there if it's unhealed. If it's an unhealed wound, that 5-year-old wound is still there. And it says, oh God, this experience, yeah, attack, defend, run away, shut down. It'll tell you all these mechanisms, all these defense mechanisms for how to deal with this current situation. So when we do that, who's actually responding in the moment? I'm 63. It's not the 63-year-old. It's a 5-year-old just acting within a 63-year-old body. And that's why we're in satsang. That's why we do this work, to become free, to know the freedom that we are beyond all of this deep programming that is so loud and pernicious. So we learn to inquire, is that who I am? Is that the totality of me? This thing I call me, and all these feelings that I call me, and all these reactions and fears, yes, they are occurring because they're part of my conditioning and programming, but are they me? And one way to look at that is the infinite and the finite. All these feelings, are they persistent? Do they remain? Are they always there? No, they come and they go. Thoughts about my own sense of being, do they remain stable? No, they keep changing. I'm worthy, I'm unworthy, I'm good, I'm not. Just our story changes all the time. It's not consistent. It changes. A thought comes, it lasts for a while, it goes. When the thought goes, do I go? Does part of me go with it? No, it's just a thought. It has no actual substance, just a thought. What is the being within which all of this is coming and going, arising and passing? We inquire, who am I really? And we find through our practices and our devotions, again and again and again, the same truth, the same grace, the same stillness of being. We find it again and again and again. It's the one thing that remains constant. Even when we get lost in the stories and these experiences, the second that we come back to truth, there it is. It doesn't have to come back. It doesn't have to return. It's already there. We return to it. We return our awareness, our attention to the ever-present grace of our own being. It's always there. All this other stuff, constantly changing, coming and going, and we give it so much weight and value. And it's like having a bad dream and believing every moment of the dream because you've forgotten that you're dreaming. So when we find that grace again and again and again, either through a formal meditation or just through our practice of living a more conscious, aware life, I know, Gary, you've talked about this a lot, that, you now know how to go through your life and simply be walking through your life and just ask, wait, who's having this experience? Wait, what's really happening? Who am I really? What are the different layers, if you will, of this thing I call self? Am I just a body? Am I my mind? Am I my thoughts? Am I the ego construct? All these wavering, shifting things. Is there anything stable? Oh, yeah, my being. It's always been there. So we keep waking up to that reality again and again and again. And when we do, name it. Name it as self, not as an experience. Oh, I'm having that great experience again of peace. No, you are the peace. It's not I am having the great experience of peace. Ah, there's peace. Ah, there I am. There I am. The not made up self. And at some point, you accept it. And until you do, you struggle. Now, the struggle will diminish and lessen and perhaps ease. But there is a moment where you get to choose. Why in the world would I ever, ever, ever give more weight and authority to something that I know is a construct of beliefs, many which do not help me, many which are disempowering? Why in the world would I give them one iota of attention or of belief? Let's put it that way, of belief, because you do actually want to give them some attention for some healing work. But belief, that's a whole different story. Why would I believe anymore what I know is conditioning, when through my practices I have also come to know a divine nature of my being? Only because you don't believe it, only because the ego tells you not to. No, don't believe that. Don't believe that. That's too threatening. You can't live as that. We'll get creamed. We'll get rejected. We'll make mistakes. Oh, and then we won't be loved again. Oh God, we can't have that. And it just starts telling its stories again. So at some point you abide. At some point, you just tell yourself, never again. I'm done. Now, it doesn't mean it's just going to shut up right away, but now when it arises, you can see it for what it is and say, oh, yeah, there it is again. Fascinating. Be curious. Lifetimes ago, I used to smoke for a period of time, and I would quit, and then I would go to a party or something, and then on the way home, it'd be like, God, it would really, I miss a good cigarette, especially after a night of, partying or drinking. And so, on the way home, I'd buy a pack of cigarettes, and the idea was I'll just smoke a few tonight, and then I'll throw them out. Maybe I wouldn't really throw them out, and then next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I'm smoking again, and so I'd quit again, and that went on for a while, as it often does. Mark Twain had a great thing to say about smoking. He goes, oh, quitting smoking? Pfft, that's easy. I've done it hundreds of times. So what worked for me finally was I realized I couldn't just make it I quit. I'm no longer a smoker. I've quit smoking. I had to make a promise. I had to come to a devotion. I didn't know it was called devotion at the time. But I got to a point where I said, all right, here's the deal. Here's the agreement with myself. I will never have another cigarette the rest of my life. Now, that's a very different thing than I've quit smoking. Well, I've quit smoking, but I'm going to have a few, and I'm not really smoking again. I'm just having a few tonight. I'm just having one at a party. I'm just having one every once in a while, but I'm not really smoking again. But I will never have another cigarette the rest of my life. That's a devotion. And then when I would want one, there was no excuse to get around that devotion. The promise to myself was I'm never going to have another cigarette the rest of my life. And when I wanted one, either I violated my devotion or I didn't. And that's the only thing that ended up working for me. So I invite you to abide your truth. The self that you can scarcely believe is really you, because it feels so whole, and you're so used to feeling a lack of wholeness. And your wholeness isn't something you need to hold together. It's not something you need to create. It's not something you become. The self without the story is beautiful, divine, whole, perfect, unique. The unique self is the soulful expression of the oneness. Each soul is unique. And the consciousness of being allows the uniqueness of our soul. The consciousness of our being allows the uniqueness of our soul to be fully expressed, to live its dharma, to walk its path, to find its way, to evolve. What a blessing. What a beautiful opportunity we have in this life if we choose to take it. Or we can go through the rest of our life struggling with trying to get our narrative to stabilize. Ask yourself, in this moment of rest, in this moment of presence, ask yourself, if sitting right here, right now, if my entire egoic construct, my entire storyline, my entire narrative dropped away for 5 seconds, during that 5 seconds, would I cease to exist? Would I disappear? Would I stop being? It's the most powerful meditation I know, that inquiry right there. If my entire story, narrative, construct of self, if my entire collection of beliefs and conditioning and programming, if all of that just stopped for 10 seconds, during that 10 seconds, would I disappear? Would I stop being? Would I cease to exist? what remains? And that which remains, what is the nature of that which remains, that doesn't come and go, which we call awareness or consciousness? What is the nature of your being? And if that's truly your truth, your central truth, why not live only as that? Why not? So what comes up for you? I know it's vulnerable to perhaps engage or ask a question, or certainly to jump in to the call, have a conversation. But, this is a delicate journey. And it's all good. If you're on the journey, hallelujah. Doesn't matter where you are on the journey. If you're on the journey, awesome. Where do you find yourself right now? How is life different when you stop taking everything in, giving it to the database, and then reacting, taking it all in, giving it to the stories, to all the different wounded or unhealed versions of you that have all their insights and perspectives on how you should feel and what you should do? When you break that cycle, when you break that habit, and you start abiding your own heart, which is the portal to boundless grace that you are, what happens? Either what is your experience or what do you imagine would be different? Feel into that. This is a wonderful meditation and one of the lessons from the Living Beyond the Noise course that if you're an Oasis member, you now have access to this comprehensive course. It'll take you through just about everything you need to know, and the different meditations and ways of perceiving and seeing and feeling to recognize and abide and live as your most divine nature, your truth. And in there, one of the lessons is about the direct path. And that's what we work with here, is the direct path. Got a resident fly this morning joining Satsang. Is the direct path. The progressive path to our freedom that we already are is to progressively chip away at all the stories, to progressively do the work, do the healing, do the childhood healing work, do the different, all the different modalities that there are, breath work or psychedelics or therapy or somatic healing. There's so many different ways to come into more alignment with our truth and to disentangle ourselves from our stories. The progressive path says, I'm going to progress through all this disentangling and seeing through all the illusions and seeing through the lies that I tell about myself and about the world and about all that is happening, and to break down all those illusions and veils until I can see what's beyond the veil. The direct path, which we practice here, says, let's go directly to that truth. It's already there. It's behind all the noise. Let's find our way to quiet the noise long enough, or dig underneath it, or bypass it. Set it aside for a bit to find our essential divine power. When we awaken our authentic peace, we awaken our authentic power. Let's find that. Let's go directly there and have the direct experience of that through these meditations, through the practices, through the processes, through our journaling, through these conversations, through satsang. Let's go directly to that divine nature of our being. And then from there, rested there, we can start to invite all the parts of us that need to be healed. We can start to meet our conditioning, meet our programming, meet our wounding, meet our stories, and shine the light of truth into their darkness so that they are dissolved, so that they are enlightened. That's the direct path. That's what we're doing here. We're not hoping that someday I'll be free when all of my BS quiets. Like, no, I'm learning that the essence of my being already is free. I don't have to go through all the layers. They don't all have to be gone to get to that truth. I can go directly to that truth and let it shine from within and dissolve all the layers that have been trying and successfully achieving the veiling of that light, of that truth. It's a blossoming. We find the truth of our being and allow it to blossom. We keep giving it attention, nourishment, love, attention, belief, not belief, abidance. We keep recognizing our truth, and every time we do, it gets bigger and bigger. And after a while, it blossoms. And then that blossoming is present to receive any conditioning, any wounding, any stories that still need to be loved. So, recognize that mostly, if we're not paying attention, we are living life through the lens, through the perspective of a database of conditioning. And so we practice knowing our essential nature, our divine grace. So that as that blossoms and strengthens, it doesn't really strengthen, it's already whole. But as its presence is more consistently and deeply known, we find we can actually live this life rested in an equanimity, in a stability of grace that allows us to listen to our own higher truth, to listen to our soul's inclinations, to listen to our soul's directives, instead of our egoic, typically fearful directives. We can actually listen to our authentic nature and live as that. That's beautiful. Okay. So, we're going to wrap it up here today. Unless there are some questions, shares, conversations that want to be had, I don't know what else I have to say today regarding the simplicity of awakening our grace so it can blossom. Initially, it shows up in the background. After a while, it pervades all the experience. And then after a while, all of the egoic construct really starts to fall away. And all that's left is our truth. Hello, Ali. Thank you for providing Living Beyond the Noise for Oasis members. Yeah, thank you, Ali. Absolutely. You know, as the Oasis is shifting to only be available to students of the Living Beyond the Noise course, I wanted to make sure everyone who was already a member then got the course. And I'm happy to share it. I'm getting more and more clear as we're moving into these especially the next coming years that are going to be really tough. That I want this body of work to be out there, a guide to help people to find their grace. See, I wanted to say this earlier and neglected to. What we're all doing here is so very, very important, because I'm telling you, as the world gets more challenging, people are going to be losing their minds, which ultimately is a good thing. But in this regard, people are going to be, they're not going to be losing their minds. People are going to be more and more tightening around their beliefs and their stories and their fears. There's going to be a lot of upheaval. And that makes people uncomfortable. If they don't have a ground of being, if they don't have a ground of peace, they feel even more vulnerable. So they kind of double down on their reactions and their defenses and their attacks. And there's going to be people acting more selfishly. There's going to be people acting without thought, without heart, just pure ego-based reactions. And it's going to be such an empowerment to be somebody who can remain in an equanimity of grace, still set boundaries, say yes and no, take care of yourself, but to do so not from anger or rancor or vilification, but simply to set boundaries and create the relationships that you want to create, let go of the ones you want to let go of, and have the conversations you need to have, but to have them as your boundless nature of being. That's going to be remarkably important. So I want the Living Beyond the Noise course to get out to as many people as possible. And that's one of the reasons I lowered the cost of it and lowered the cost of the bundle, that if you buy the course, you can also join the Oasis at a lowered price. And I lowered the price for everyone already in the Oasis. I'm doing all of that because my own soul, my own being, got very clear with me. And it said, this has got to be more accessible and affordable for all. Do everything you can. I've got to make a living, and I've got to run my business, if you will. It's so weird to call it a business, but I wanted to support this work. But that was the message: affordable and accessible awakening for all, because this work is needed. I don't see any other way to real peace than to know ourselves, to awaken as who we really are, beyond the stories, the narratives, the pain, the darkness, the illusion. How can we all live an authentic, beautiful, vibrant life together if most everyone is living in the illusions of their own egoic construct? It's impossible. Ali says, this week I notice my mind is racing here and there, thinking about the past, reliving the past, and get emotional and worrying about the future. Today, Satsang really helps in pointing to practice more to presence. Yeah, this is beautiful. Ali, so, and for all, the idea is not to get the mind to stop running its habits. In fact, it's going to run its habits even louder when you stop believing in them so much, because it's going to say, whoa, you used to at least listen. You used to, give me some measure of attention. And now you're not even listening anymore. So maybe I need to be louder. Maybe I need to get even stronger. So, and that's another lesson in the Living Beyond the Noise course too, is about meeting your ego's resistance. So that'll happen. So the idea is not that those need to stop and that we're failing until they do stop. It's allowing them and not believing their narrative any longer. There's a wonderful phrase that I've been using recently that is, when you leave your thoughts alone, they will leave you alone. Let them come up. Like you said, my mind racing here and there, thinking about the past, reliving the past, getting emotional, worrying about the future. Yeah, that's going to come up. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. By the way, worry is not a power. It's not an empowering thing. The mind thinks it needs to worry about the future because it believes that it won't take action unless it is trying to avoid catastrophe. It's wired that way. It's wired to say, I won't take action unless there's a problem. So I need to cogitate on the problem. I need to ruminate on the problem because that's going to inspire action. And the truth is, and somewhere in the Oasis, do a search. There's a search place in the Oasis, typical magnifying glass place. And if you type in contemplation, I think I've got a lesson in there called The Art of Contemplation. And it's about allowing yourself to be with a future event, to consider it, but not worry about it, to not just to let it be there as a consideration. Oh, this thing's happening in my future. Let me just be with it. I don't have to rush to solve it and rush to fix it. I can just contemplate it for a week or two until I find the way through. So yeah, you will notice your mind, especially when we try to get really quiet. You'll notice the mind saying, what the hell are you doing? We got a lot of stuff to work on. Don't you remember how many problems we have? We don't have time to be quiet. And yet it's the very thing that we need in order to actually feel into our truth, to listen to our higher self instead of to listen to our panicked constructs. I remember I took about a month sabbatical, living at home. I just thought I'm going to take a sabbatical, stay at home, not go anywhere, but I'm not going to do anything. And I was living in San Diego, and I lived about 20 minutes from the beach, and I would go to the beach almost every day. This beautiful place in Del Mar under the cliffs. And I would go for these long walks. And when I first started doing that, the mind would go, oh, wow, awesome. We're going to go on a long walk. What an amazing time to think about all my problems. What an amazing time to fix everything, to figure everything out. And I just trained myself to not. I trained myself to say, nope, I'm right now, I'm going to smell the sea air. I'm going to feel the wind on my skin. I'm going to appreciate the light. I'm going to notice the waves. I'm going to say hi to that person walking by. And then the mind would do that for about a minute or less. And then I would start to ruminate on everything again. And I would say, nope, stop. Or I would give it a different thing. Instead of working on the problems, I would walk with the central questions. Who am I really? What is the nature of my being? What is happening right now? What is ego? What is grace? I would marinate on the lessons that I was studying. Yeah, that's the way to put it. So if you take still time for stillness and your mind starts to do what you're talking about, Ollie, racing here and there, train it to instead simply, the mind wants to be active, let it be active, but ask it to marinate on these lessons. Ask it to marinate on what's really happening. What is worry? On whose behalf is this worry arising? Would the essential nature of my being be worried? If I came to rest and sat in this grace of being, thinking about if I stopped all my stories, would I disappear? Oh, no, I would exist. My being would exist. Then you can ask, would my being be worried about this thing that, quote, I am so worried about? So you can do that. Which I am I talking about here? So you train yourself to not always be fixing problems or working on solutions. You train yourself to be mostly dialoguing around the nature of reality. Before I left Sedona, I would go on these 4-mile hikes most every morning. And it was beautiful. I would just find that I wasn't taking that time to work out all the stuff that I was working on. Sometime I'd be like, oh, I've got this course I'm going to launch, and what do I need to do around that, and what do I want it to be about, etc. But for the most part, most of that time was spent contemplating the nature of reality, and that took care of everything. Because once I was more clear on and abiding the nature of reality, the more I could meet any moment that came up. I didn't have to worry about the future because I knew that as it arrived, that I was going to be present with the truth, present with the truth, present with the truth. The future keeps arriving and I'm present with the truth. That's the only thing I needed to quote, worry about was, can I be present as truth? Because that's going to take care of everything. I hope that's helpful. Yeah. And thank you for sharing. You're welcome, Ollie. And thank you for sharing, because that's your question is everybody's question. You say that, I find my mind was really racing and thinking about the future and worrying, and I can guarantee that others are going, oh, yeah, right, no kidding, but there's no way to stop that. You know, how do I get beyond that? So we talk about it. That's what satsang is. That's what community is. Gary says, it has taken me a while for the concepts presented to become real to me. That's so perfect. You say more, but I would just want to address that. For the concepts to become real, yeah, they start as concepts. They start as we hold them in our mind as an imagining. Well, imagine if that is true. Huh, maybe it is. That's a new concept. Oh, I have never thought about things that way. And then we sit with them. And we imagine and we play with and we let them sink in and we see if there's some reality there in our direct experience. So a concept becomes a direct experience. And once it becomes a direct experience, then we can trust it more. Because any concept that is being held in the mind only is then subject to all of the mind's questions and doubts and uncertainties. It'll hold the concept, then it'll question the concept, then it'll doubt the concept, then it'll reject the concept. But when we drop it into some direct experience, we just go, well, there's the evidence. It's right there. The piece of my being is always there every time. It never comes and goes. Yeah. Then you say, so yeah, I love that. It's taken me a while for the concepts presented to become real. They're still sinking in. Yeah, they're still pervading that truth of being pervading the experience. They're still sinking in. They're still saturating your life. But this work has helped me meet, I'm trying to do this without my glasses, and that's just stupid. But this work has helped me meet life's challenges in a healthy way. I feel, in parentheses, some growth. Yeah, right on. Imagine a flower sprouting from the seed, or a tree, right? And imagine the seedling in its first few weeks of growth being disappointed or bummed because it's not the full oak tree yet. No, you're a seedling now. You're supposed to be a seedling right now. You've got to go through seedling to become the oak tree. So, or a rose, still in bud form, and looking around and seeing other roses blossomed. And if that little bud was saying, "Oh, I'm so incomplete," or "I'm so inadequate because I'm not in full bloom," it's like, no, you're a bud. You got to be. So be a bud. So yeah, I love this. I feel it helps me meet life's challenges in a healthy way. Yeah, in a real way. Meet life's challenges from your wholeness, from your burgeoning knowing of wholeness, from your burgeoning abidance of your wholeness. Meet life as that. Because otherwise, we're meeting life literally from a messed up database of being, of self, not of being, but of our story. Remember, ego is not a thing. There's no substance to ego. Ego is activity of mind. So yeah, it helps meet life in a healthy way, and you feel some growth. Yeah, good. That growth will beget more growth, and that growth will beget more growth. It's like hiking, and you see a peak that you want to get to, and it's the horizon. There's nothing beyond it as far as you can see from where you stand. And you hike up, and you get to that peak. And then from there you go, oh my God, there's this whole other vista that I couldn't see from before. But now that I'm at this level, I can see more. And then you see another peak and you go, oh, that's the top. And so you hike up to that one and you get to that peak. And then you look and you go, oh, no, there's so much more. There's always more. Yeah. This is good. So yes, allow yourselves to contemplate. Take your time in your walks, in your meditations, in your stillness, and don't train yourself to stop trying to fix problems and worry about the future or ruminate on the past. Simply take that time to contemplate the nature of reality. And that will take care of everything. All right, my friends. So I'll post the next satsang soon. It'll be in 2 weeks. It'll be a Sunday. And then we'll go back to Wednesday. So we're doing Sundays and then Wednesdays, every other. Stay in the studies. Dive into the Living Beyond the Noise course. Try not to skip ahead. Try to stay going through it step by step with patience. Marinate on what you're learning. Journal. And that's how the seedling becomes an oak. That's how the blossoming of our truth that is already present blossoms and pervades the dense narrative of the egoic mind, little by little, step by step, with patience. And the one thing that'll tell you not to be patient is the egoic mind that is still just trying its old ways to feel peace. It wants it faster, it wants it easier, and it wants it as a concept and a belief. And it says, I'll just do better. The ego says, I'll just be better. I'll be better. I'll have better thoughts. And I'll really strengthen those thoughts until they hold, until they never change. How's that going? Oh, beautiful. Gary here. Oh no, and thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, my friends. Blessings, much love. Stay in the work. It's worth it. It's you can realize the freedom that you already possess. That's already your essence through perseverance and devotion and practice and study. And it's worth it because, without that, without that knowing of our truth, we're living in a fantasy world that won't stabilize. Yeah. All right. Much love, blessings, and we'll see you soon.